All right, can everybody hear me? Okay, thanks. And welcome, and this is a picture of my laboratory here, where I work at the University of Minnesota right on the Mississippi River. And so if you ever get to Minneapolis and you want to see a really cool lab, just come on out and talk to me. I think the problem that we're talking about today for my talk is really diversity in STEM, as well as even more so diversity in the ecological sciences and data forecasting. And as you see from this graph, this is bachelor's degrees in the United States up to 2015, which is the latest data released by NSF. And you can see that there's some decline in the percent of bachelor's degrees by white people, but not a lot of movement in increase in the number or percent of participation by minority candidates, with the exception of Hispanics, which seem to be on the rise, but then their population is as well. This is master's degrees, and this is not percentages. Look at that, it's thousands, and I wasn't able to get similar graphs for both of them. But you can see again, the green line on the top is white, the bottom lines are American Indian, Black, and Hispanic or Latino. Not a lot of movement upward over the decade and a half there. And then the little sort of pink line in the middle is international students coming into the country, and that's been hugely on the increase. The doctoral degrees look very similar to this. I didn't get that chart in there as well. The point is that we're not seeing a lot of change in these numbers, despite a lot of money invested. And I think that's why NSF's come out with the Includes program. It's really an effort to make a sea level change difference in diversity in our institutions. And why do you want this? Partly it's because it's the ethical thing to do to involve all of our populations, but we also know it leads to better science, to have a wider diversity of perspectives, and also not to leave out a lot of the people that could be future scientists and leaders in the community. And as well, when you work on this, it helps to answer some of your broader impacts. And so understanding how to do this work and do it well, as opposed to just having it as an add-on to your science proposals, is probably a good thing. And I like this framework for understanding, more for understanding what Jackie was talking about, education and diversity, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But this is by Eric Jolly, who was the president of our Science Museum for a while, is also a Cherokee Native American, but he worked on this paper called Engagement, Capacity, and Continuity with Leslie Perlman and Patricia Campbell. And I like this framework because it really breaks down how you approach this question of getting people into the sciences. And engagement is really getting people interested, capturing their enthusiasm, making them want to be scientists. Capacity is, do they have the content knowledge? Do they have the math they need? Do they have the sciences that they need to move on to each level of their education? And the third one, continuity, is one I think is often left out, but it's really like, is their next step there? Do they have the algebra they need, and then the trigonometry and calculus in their colleges? Do they have the courses that they need available to them? Do they have the advising they need? Do they have other things that they need in order to move forward? Because if it's not there, then all the engagement and capacity they may have won't make them into scientists. And I think that's what this study shows, is each of these things are necessary, but they're not sufficient independently. And often programs, that's why successful programs that are able to, for example, engage students in learning, don't make the next leap to actually making them into scientists, okay? And I think continuity is a big one for you guys. Does the student have access? And Jackie talked about that somewhat already. Availability of programs, majors, classes, advising, tutoring, a quiet place to study. This also has to do with funding, an inclusive environment, and also libraries and stuff like that. And if you find these barriers, there are your opportunities, as Jason mentioned. That is where, if you know your science and you say, well, really, the real problem is students don't have the money. Well, that's a way to go forward, right? Or if they don't have the majors that they need, that's a big problem. One of the things I want to mention is if you do decide to do diversity work, you do not have to attack every aspect of the pipeline and problem. You, like with your own data forecasting, just need to pick one small part and work away at it. But I will say that this continuity question is an equity issue in data sciences particularly, and I'm not the only one who thinks so. So here's a big report put out by NSF called Keeping Data Science Broad, and it was the report from a series of workshops and conferences, meetings, and all kinds of things. And you can find it at this link. I hope the slides will be available. But basically, they talked about the impact that the data divide can have on STEM diversity, and that the push for more science done by big data might also have the impact of making the field even less diverse, widening the gap. And why is because a lot of the institutions where minority students start, which are Hispanic serving community colleges, teaching institutions, historically Black colleges, tribal colleges, and like that, don't have the programs and aren't developing them. And a lot of the reasons they aren't is because they're addressing the needs of their population of students. But if you have a student who comes in who has the engagement and the capacity to be a big data scientist, but they started at a tribal college, they might never get where they need to be because they don't have the preliminary courses they need, and so forth. And so the question for you all is, how do you address that as a field, and how do you change that? And Jackie mentioned a lot of things that I think are good diversity programs as well as education programs. So how do you know a diversity program from an education program? Well, I think education programs are great, and we need them, and we need to develop them. But when you start to think strategically about diversity is when you change an education program into specifically a diversity program. One of the things to look at is what audience are you reaching? So if you have a great education program at an institution that's not very diverse, it's not a diversity program. But if you have the same program at a tribal college, it may very well be a diversity program. And a lot of that has to do with transfer students and what do you do with them, because we know that the majority of underrepresented students who go into the sciences start at two-year programs, and it's a big place where the pipeline is broken, is when they transfer. And so building ways to transfer students from high school to college, from college to two-year programs, from two-year programs to graduate program, or four-year to graduate. These are programs that specifically build diversity. Bridge programs, sometimes they're called, and also involving culturally relevant pedagogy. So thinking about how you're teaching something and how you're teaching it in a way that's relevant. Involving student groups, organizations, cultural centers, thinking about your institutional climate, as Jackie mentioned. And then, are you having good diverse recruiting strategies, and are your acceptance criteria actually producing the kind of student body that you want? Or are they incorporating aspects that don't actually lead to better undergraduates, but do bar a lot of students from getting into college? But I think it all comes down to strategic planning for diversity. I don't think that you would start your own ecological forecasting program without strategically thinking about goals, outcomes, objectives, assessment, and doing some research, you know? So if you haven't read any of the literature on student diversity, or you haven't gone to any of the sessions at AGU on student diversity, or done anything for connecting with communities and asking communities what are the barriers, then you haven't been doing strategic planning for diversity, okay? And so those are, I think, some important aspects. Learn all you can is really important. Strategies that reach K-12 publics can pretty much be broken down into things like direct interaction with students, going into the schools, camps, fairs, museums, all of those kinds of direct interactions. And those are great. I mean, students love it when scientists come in and talk to them in whatever aspect. Developing curriculum and learning tools is something that you all might have been involved in. Be sure when you do, you don't create something that doesn't meet standards or is workable for teachers. So once again, I would talk to teachers or professionals. Teacher professional development is another thing. Sometimes all of these kind of work together, where you develop some curriculum, work with the teachers, bring it into the school. And ultimately, you can also have institutional change within the schools, just change the way schools work. And then there's also engaging the public, citizen science projects, and stuff like that. Undergraduates, again, you see across the bottom, engagement, capacity, continuity, and strategic planning for diversity. I bring those up again and again because I think while you're doing all of these things, and Jackie mentioned a lot of these different tools for working with undergraduates, you should really be thinking about them in terms of, am I trying to excite the students? Am I building their content knowledge? Or am I giving them those technological tools that they need? All of that is important. And improve your classroom strategies. Service learning is often a good way to reach out to underrepresented students who tend to like to go back to their communities and talk. Also, think about your mentoring, advising, recruiting, and retention again. And I would say the same for graduate students. You know, we have this tendency to think, well, when graduate students come in, then they're ready, and we can just teach them the way we were always taught. But actually, we know that we lose a lot of our underrepresented students at this phase. And oftentimes they leave and don't tell you why. And I think that a lot of the things that they're dealing with are things you don't understand or know about. Maybe they're having real work-life balance issues. They're having issues with their communities back home and feel like they have to go home, or they're feeling unincluded with a lot of different things. So get to know some of the literature on graduate students. And then I think same thing for faculty, you know, we lose faculty as well, women faculty and underrepresented faculty, and it's because we don't really look at these things when you're talking about diversity, like how does professional development help faculty come in from underrepresented groups and help them be one of 2 or 3 key faculty at your institution who are from an underrepresented group, or work-life balance, networking. How does your hiring process and your criteria for promotion impact keeping faculty in your institution? So all of these things are things that you can think about strategically and try to plan for. Each one of these is a nugget of a program that you could be working on as your broader impacts and figuring out a process. Some basic strategies, I would say, use that Trilogy framework. I have used it for 15 years every time I come up with a project, and I ask myself, which of these things am I doing? Engagement, capacity, continuity, or in collaboration with each other. It helps to clarify what outcomes you expect and how to assess what you're doing. I always say go really slow. Don't hop into something overnight, you know, do your research, do your learning, talk to community, and really figure out what's been done and where you fit in with that. Partner with experts in your university and outside of your university, so education researchers, community members, teachers, informal educators, and so forth. And don't rebuild the wheel. A lot of times there's somebody already, like I have a very nice science camp that I run with Native students up in Minneapolis or Minnesota, and we're always looking for new partners, new grant funding, new scientists to come in and work with us. So you can fit into something that's already ongoing instead of building a whole new science camp, for example. And it's a lot easier. And then find out what's happening within your university community and where you fit with it. And do things that you like to do. You know, just feel like you're doing this because you have to, but really think about, do I want to go to the Minnesota State Fair? Do I want to go up to science camp? Would I rather work at graduate level problems in university or what? Okay, and then think about the fact that the road goes both directions. You know, my mother used to always complain back when she was still alive that I would not come home often enough to visit, and my husband used to say, well, you know, the road does drive both directions, you know, blah, blah. But I think sometimes we forget too. We expect people to come to us both physically and metaphorically, instead of going to where they are at. And so sometimes I think you can go visit some private colleges, Hispanic serving institutions, talk to the faculty there, go to K-12 schools, and listen while you're there. Don't just do all the thinking, but actually listen to what people have to tell you. Especially teachers will give you an earful, I'm telling you. Attend minority professional conferences, American Indian Science and Engineering Society, the Society for the Advancement of Chicago's and Native Americans in Science, the National Alliance of Black Geophysicists or Black Chemists. There are any number of them, and oftentimes the only people attending them are minority faculty. So take some time to think about sending yourself or a graduate student going, and there are opportunities to mentor students at those conferences. Also, when you go to AGU, how about looking into some of those education sections? A lot of times when we're giving education and diversity talks, we're talking to other educators and diversity people. And I understand that hydrologists are basically talking to other hydrologists. But I invite you to come on into our sessions and hear, especially if you get an opportunity to hear some of the Native American traditional knowledge talks. Those are really interesting. Don't be afraid to ask hard questions, but be respectful about how you do it. Now go write your proposals once you've done all that hard work. And I'd say you can all be a force for diversity and inclusion within your organization. A lot of departments are starting diversity committees where they're bringing up that conversation within their department, supporting institutional change, talking to your department chairs, directors, all of that. Develop better relationships between your university and other communities. So we have a bad history in Minnesota with our Native populations. A lot of research has been done that basically ran over their values and opinions. And there's a lot of researchers who are working very hard to fix that right now. And that's good work that can be done anywhere. And do the same with your professional societies. You know, consider finding out who's on the AGU diversity committee, for example. I personally, I like to close, I love networking. I think it makes me a strong force for good. I've made a lot of friends, and it helps me learn knowledge and to run my programs better. It's made my career really effective. And I would say that all of us should be networking for diversity. So if you think about it, you probably are all in your social networks really well networked, and you probably deal with a lot of different people at a lot of different levels, institutions, and so forth. So when you see people who aren't well networked in, help them get well networked in. So for example, if you work with someone from a minority serving institution and they never go to AGU or GSA or any of that, take them to a conference, see if you can fund them to go, or introduce them to people, get them involved, and be really like open about this. You don't have to compete, you know, you can definitely like help build a wide pool. Recruit advisors and mentors into your network because they're the ones who are going to continuously provide you with students over the years. I say you can recruit one student and you got one student, but if you recruit a faculty member, you'll have students year after year after year in the program. And I like to use what I learned to create more inclusive programs. So I like to listen to the people I'm networking with and so forth. So I'm rushing because I don't know how much time I have left, but this is the Geoscience Alliance. This is a national alliance I started when I was working for the National Center for Earth Surface Dynamics in about 2007, just by having a session here and there at professional conferences and seeing who came. And the goal of it is broaden participation of Native Americans in the geosciences as a very loosely defined geosciences. I always say you don't have to be a geoscientist or a Native American to be in the Geoscience Alliance, but what we're trying to do is create a huge social network where we're bringing people together who care about this, both Native students, Native faculty, and non-Native students and faculty, people from AGU and national labs and the USGS and whatever, so that students can find the opportunities they need and that people can find collaborative networks where they can build strong diversity programs. So, I see I do have and I'm on time. Well, very good.